This is going to be a step-by-step guide on how to use Streamlabs desktop. If you are using another software like OBS Studio, then these settings will pretty much still apply to that as well, although a couple things might look a little bit different. All the main settings will still apply. If you would like to download Streamlabs desktop and follow along, I'll leave a link in the description to download Streamlabs desktop for free so that you can get started and follow along. So when you first open up Streamlabs desktop, it's going to look something like this. What we're going to do is first just go down to the settings, and I'm going to guide you through each one of these so that you know pretty much what you need to know about each one of them. Starting with the general tab, there's really not too much here to worry about. If anything, I would leave everything alone and maybe change under the output tab or section here. If you want a confirmation dialog whenever you click to go live or start your stream, you can have that on. It can be useful. You can also set it to automatically start recording when your stream starts. As well as a few other things here, but these are personal preference for the most part, so don't worry too much about them, but just know that they are there if you are looking for something like that. Now the next tab is multi-streaming. This has become very popular. This is basically just where your stream is getting pushed out to multiple platforms at one time. Keep in mind, this is going to require more internet bandwidth, particularly upload speed. So if you don't have a very high upload speed, don't look into multi-streaming too much anyways. But if you do have a good upload speed, multi-streaming is very good and very popular. This means you're going to be able to live stream on places like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch all at the same time, or whatever combination of platforms you like. But on this tab, they give you some basic instructions to get started on that. I personally don't have good enough internet to even multi-stream, so I've never even done it. But do know that if you do want that functionality, it is here. The next tab is called Stream. This is a pretty important one. Now, there's a couple options you have here. This is basically setting up where you're going to live stream to, or the account you're going to be sending that stream to, which is of course important. So you're going to have a couple options here with Streamlabs in specific. This is where it's going to be a little different than OBS. So for Streamlabs, you can actually come down here to the bottom left and click this login button. Now, if you click this, it's going to give you platform options where you can actually just log in to the Twitch account or the YouTube account that you specifically want to live stream to, as well as some of these other platforms. This makes it very easy and you don't have to worry about getting your stream key, which isn't too difficult either if you do have to go that route. But this makes an easy way to just simply log into the account you want to stream from, and then you're pretty much set up from there. Now, if you are not logged in or for some reason you don't want to and you want to do it the stream key method, all you have to do is go to streaming services. You can select your service. So here we have either Twitch or YouTube in most cases. Let's just say you have a Twitch stream. It's going to automatically have a server here. All you have to do is go into your Twitch settings if it's a Twitch stream and find your stream key. You paste that into here. Make sure it stays off stream. This is basically how you get your stream to your account. So you don't want anybody having that key or they're going to be streaming on your account or able to. You can also reset it if that does happen and you accidentally leak it. So that can be one advantage of just logging in, is you don't have to risk showing a stream key on accident and things like that. But just know that this is how you set it up. If you don't want to do the login, you just find that stream key on either Twitch, or if you do YouTube like this, it's the same thing. You're going to get a stream key, you paste it in here, and then you're pretty much connected. You don't need to change anything else here. Leave this on primary YouTube ingest server, and you should be good to go. Now we're moving on to the output section. Now this is where there's a lot of important settings and things you want to make sure you get right here, because this is stuff that's going to really impact the overall quality of your stream and just how it's actually functioning. So at the top, Streamlabs gives you both a simple and an advanced output mode. There's nothing wrong with using simple. I'm going to go over simple settings first, and then I'll go into advanced and show you a couple other options you could change and reasons you might want to do that. But first, let's just go ahead and I'll give you kind of a simple some simple output settings. So starting with your video bitrate, this is one of the most important settings. It's also one of the most important settings to understand when you're streaming. Basically, how I would put it is, if your upload speed when you run a speed test is not at least a solid, consistent 10 up, then you're not going to be able to live stream very well unless you're streaming at pretty low quality. So make sure your upload speed, wherever you're at in the world, is at least a 10 upload. If you don't have at least a 10, again, it's going to be tougher to stream because you just pretty much don't have enough internet bandwidth to stream well at good quality without any impact on your performance of your internet as a whole. Now, if you're somebody that has internet well above 10, whether you have 20 up, 50 up, 100 up, 1,000 up, if you have gigabit, then you're good to go. You don't need to worry about anything else. As long as you have ideally 20 or higher upload speed, then you're definitely pretty good for streaming at 1080p, even 60 FPS at a solid bitrate. So just know that. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on that, but that's basically the guidelines I would give you. Now, with that said, let's assume you have an upload speed of at least 10 or more. So your video bitrate, if you're assuming you want to stream at 1080p resolution, which is kind of your standard high definition, which most people are going to want to stream at if you're able, you're going to want to set this video bitrate anywhere between 4,500 and 6,000. This is going to give you some decent quality, and it's really preferred by the platforms, especially Twitch, I think limits you at 6,000. YouTube's a little bit different. You can see some of their specifications on their website, which I'll link to YouTube's and Twitch's guidelines below if you do want to check them out. But here I'll actually drag some over so you can see them. So this is YouTube's specifications. Again, I'll link this below so you can check it out. It shows you some different resolutions and frame rates and what you want to actually set your bitrate to. They just don't have them in the like thousands here, but this would be like 4,000. This would be 10,000. This would be 3,000. Of course, and basically this is how much upload speed it's using of your internet, which is again why it's important to have at least 10 for doing 1080p, because you're going to need to send it enough to be able to get that video out at a good quality. And then here is some of the Twitch guidelines if you want to take a look at this. 6,000 bit rate, which is what I'm going to suggest here, is what Twitch recommends for 1080p 60. Yes, going higher on your bitrate can increase your quality, is one way to increase your quality, but in this case with Twitch especially, they're going to limit most normal accounts at 6,000 anyways, so sending them more is really of no use. Even if you have 1,000 upload speed, there's really no benefit of that. It's also, the more you send, it's going to be harder for people to watch. So if you're sending more than you need to, people with especially worse internet are going to experience more issues watching the stream, such as buffering, and you really don't want that. So make sure that you do have your bitrate set properly for whatever resolution you want to stream in. Even if you're on a lower end, have some worse internet, or you want to having performance issues with your stream, and you need to go down to like 720p, then of course it gives you guidelines for that. So you can kind of find whatever you need right here. But for this video's sake, we're going to run 6,000 bitrate. That's pretty standard for 1080p 60 FPS or even 30 FPS. Now the encoder, this is a very important setting as well. Most people that have a NVIDIA graphics card, I'm going to recommend the NVENC new encoder, or just NVENC, whichever one it says. The NVENC encoder is going to be a dedicated encoder on your graphics card of NVIDIA graphics cards. So it's not going to impact performance of your games and programs and your computer while it's actually doing the work of streaming and encoding the stream. So it's generally the best option. The quality is very good, especially on the NVENC new encoder. Now, if you don't want to do that for some reason, or you want to try something different, or you just want the maximum quality, you're going to want to do the software X264 encoder. Now, this is going to work off of your CPU for the encoding, which could be bad if you're trying to game and you need that CPU power for your game. But if you do have a higher end system, you can probably still get away with the software encoding. It's going to give you the best quality overall, although NVENC new is still pretty good. So really you could use either one of these, maybe experiment with your specific use case. But for most people, to avoid any possible issues, probably just use NVENC new. It's really good. It's got good quality. And it should have pretty much no impact on your computer while you're trying to do other things. And now we get down to the recording part. Here you can just set your recording path where your videos are going to save to. You can set your recording quality to you could just leave it at same as the stream, or you could pick one of their presets. I would probably recommend high quality medium file size. It's going to give you a good quality recording at, again, a medium file size, because you don't want a massive file size. It's going to just be clogging up your computer and be too difficult to work with. So I would probably recommend that, or you could try leaving it on same as stream and just see what that does. I personally haven't done that, so I can't really tell you how good or bad that might be. But I'd probably just recommend putting it on high quality medium file size. You can't really go wrong with that. And then recording format, probably do MP4. If you are worried about like your power going out or something during recording and the thing getting corrupt and then you lose the whole video, maybe you have a longer video project, you could do MKV. MKV has less chance of like going corrupt if there was to be a power outage or an interruption, or a computer crash or something like that during the recording. So if you're concerned about things like that happening, you can use MKV. but just keep in mind you're then gonna have to convert that to an MP4, so it's a little bit less convenient. I personally just like to take the risk and just have it in MP4. It's like the standard video format. It's easy to edit in anything you want, easy to share. You can play it pretty much anywhere. So I just recommend just leave that on MP4 for most people. Everything else you can pretty much leave on default. I'm just going to leave the replay buffer for another video. It's not something we really need to cover in this video. Now those are the simple output mode settings, and they basically cover everything you're going to need to know. But let's go ahead and change this to advanced, and I'll show you a couple more options here. So first up is if you are doing software encoding with X264. Another thing when you're not on simple that's actually important, make sure you have CBR rate control. You want to make sure you're on constant bit rate when you're live streaming. Use CBR always. Again, our bit rate's at 6,000. But now if we come down here to CPU usage for the software encoder in specific, this is a very important setting. Now, the slower you set this, the better your quality is going to be, but the more CPU it's going to use. So if you put this on something like very slow or placebo, it's going to use like all your CPU. You do not want that. And if you put it all the way up on like ultra fast, it's going to be pretty low quality, but easy on your CPU. So you really want to find a middle ground here, probably somewhere between medium and very fast. Fast would be a good place to start for pretty much anybody. If you do want to try to squeeze as much quality as you can, I'd probably go medium, but no slower than that. So try to find something that works for you and your build, your computer, anywhere between medium and very fast. I think fast and faster is going to be the sweet spot for most people, maybe even very fast to minimize any performance issues with X264, because again, it's going to be utilizing your CPU, which you might need for other programs and games while you're trying to actually play on stream, and you don't want any frame drop and stutter issues on your actual stream. So you can play around with that if you are using software encoding. But like I said earlier, I'm going to recommend NVENC New for people that do have it. For people that can. If you do have an AMD graphics card, by the way, they do have their own encoder. I forget exactly what it's called, but if you do have an AMD hardware encoder, you could definitely try that out. I personally don't have much experience with that, but it can definitely be a good alternative to software encoding if you do want to give that a try. But in this case, I'm going to select NVENC New here. You can see it reset our bitrate, so I'm going to set that back to 6,000. Now, keyframe interval, you're probably good to leave this on auto most of the time, which is just 0. It's going to automatically set it for you depending on which platform you're streaming to, because different platforms might have a different suggestion, which again, in those links in the description, you can actually see whether it's Twitch or YouTube, what keyframe interval they recommend. But you can usually just get away with leaving it on 0 and it's going to automatically set. Again, we have a preset here. This is for the NVENC encoder. This is kind of similar to that CPU preset for the software encoder. This is going to just kind of give you that same kind of thing where the slower you go, the best quality, and then the fastest to go, the lower the quality, but the better the performance. For this, I would probably recommend anywhere between P4 and P6. P5's pretty good here for most people on a decent system, newer graphics card, things like that. But keep in mind, if you have performance issues, you can try lowering this to get better performance, or if you want to squeeze more quality out and you have a good rig, put it up to P7. I think this on P7 is going to give you really good quality, and it really shouldn't have too much performance impact, again, because we're using an NVENC New encoder, which is a dedicated part of your graphics card just for encoding video, so it shouldn't have too much impact on your game and things like that. But that's definitely something to check out if you need a setting like that to mess around with. Tuning, you can leave this on high quality unless you just really want a super low latency live stream. Just leave that on high quality for most people. Multi-pass mode, again, some of those sites I'll link in the description, or you can look up, might have different suggestions on the best multi-pass mode. I personally have used each one of these and have never noticed a big difference in my quality or anything, so I would just say kind of leave it on whatever it's on. You can do single pass, two pass. I don't know exactly what all it changes or how it impacts it, but in this case, mine was already on quarter resolution. I'd probably be fine just leaving it there and have no problems. Profile, you can leave this on high. Don't really need to mess with this in most cases. I would just leave that on the default of high. When it comes to these last few settings here, like look ahead and psychovisual tuning, you want to leave these on their default, which is look ahead off, psychovisual tuning on. Your GPU, just leave that on 0. That means it's going to use your GPU that's in your system basically. And your max B frames, I think most platforms recommend 2. But that's another setting if you did want to get technical about it, kind of like your keyframe interval. You can find your specific platform's recommended max B frame setting. but I think 2 is usually the best option to just kind of leave it there. So I wouldn't recommend messing with that for most people. Now, if we go to the advanced recording settings now, we're going to get a couple more options here. Now, when I record, I usually just do software encoding with X264, but you can use the NVENC new encoder as well. I usually do this because this allows me to stream with the NVENC encoder. And then if I want to record while I'm live streaming, I can do that on the CPU. And I have a pretty good build, so it doesn't have any impact on my game because my stream is running on NVENC and my recording is running off my CPU. So it kind of splits the workload. So that's why I have it set up like this. But just know that you can set it to NVENC if you do want to record with that. You don't really need to mess with too many these other little settings here. You can just scroll past. Rate control for recording. This is not live streaming. This is for recording. I like to run CRF is going to be the best option here. And this is a value here. This number is going to be the lower you go, the better quality, but the larger the file size. Whereas the higher number you go, the lower the file size, but the worse the quality. So anywhere between 15 and 23 is probably where you want to be. I like my quality at 17 is pretty good. I think the default might be on 23, but it's something you can mess around with and see where you like that balance between quality and file size, because yeah, you could put this down to like 12 and you're going to get amazing video quality, probably too good, but your file size is going to be just too massive if you lower this too much. So I'd recommend anywhere between like 15 and 23. Try that out, see how happy you are with the quality. So that's important. After that, keyframe interval, you can leave that on 0. CPU usage, I usually just leave this on fast. And then my profile and tune are just kind of defaulted to none. I just kind of leave that alone. And yeah, you set your recording path here, and that's pretty much all there is to the advanced recording settings. The next tab is audio. There's a few different ways within Streamlabs to change your audio, but this is definitely a good place to go with all your main audio kind of inputs basically in one spot. So you're gonna have your desktop audio device 1, which you definitely want to make sure is set properly. So for me, it would be my headset, which is going to be this SteelSeries Sonar Gaming output right here. So that's what I'm going to set it to make sure that my stream is going to be able to hear that, or my recording is going to be able to hear that, whatever I'm doing. After that, most of these other ones are disabled unless you have other devices connected that you want to be heard on stream. Then you can set those up there. But make sure your microphone is also set properly. For me, mine is going to be this one. So there. With those two settings, I've got my desktop audio going to the stream, and I've got my microphone properly set up with the one I selected to go to the stream. Keep in mind, with these on default, they might still work, but you could run into issues in the future. So I would recommend just setting it to what you know is your microphone, and then you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it changing on you or anything. So that's what I would recommend to do there. For the video tab, only a couple settings here, really simple. Your base canvas resolution is just the size of your monitor. It's, for me, 1920 by 1080. I got a standard monitor. Your output scaled resolution is going to be what you're actually sending out to the live stream or what you're recording at. So for me, again, I just want to do 1080. This is where if you had a 1440p monitor, you might still want to output it in 1080p because you don't want to stream in 2K or 4K if you have a 4K monitor. So definitely just set this to like 1080 if you're trying to do a 1080p live stream or recording. Downscale filter, Lanxos is going to give you the best quality, but bilinear is fine too if you leave it on that. I personally don't notice a lot of difference in the quality, but just know that you can set that to Lanxos if you technically want the best quality. And then after that, you can just leave this FPS type on common FPS values and set this to either 60 or 30. Is really the only two values you're going to want to select here. If you're doing just, a normal live stream in person or something, or a lower frame rate game, or a game with like lower motion, then 30 is probably going to look just fine. But if you are doing a faster paced game or activity, then 60 is going to look smoother. Keep in mind though, it's going to kind of be a little more difficult to run to get good quality or keep good quality when there's motion going on. It's going to use up a lot of that bitrate we set earlier. So if you do lower it to 30, it's going to be lower FPS, but you can probably get a lot better quality. But if you double that to 60, it's going to be a smoother stream, but it might get a little bit pixelated at times when there are times of fast movement. For the hotkeys tab, this is just pretty much personal preference. You can set a recording button is usually what I like to do. I like to set a start and stop recording button so I can just hit a button on my keyboard to start and stop recording. You don't need a separate interface to do this, which is what I like. You don't have to buy a Stream Deck. You can set up some of these basic functions like start and stop recording, or even start and stop the stream just on, usually I use a button on my keypad. So that's what I would recommend there if you are looking to do something like that without buying a separate Stream Deck. Now we're under the advanced tab. Now at the very top, you're going to see process priority. I recommend just putting this on above normal. I wouldn't go high, but above normal is going to make sure that your computer is allocating enough resources to Streamlabs to where you're not going to have any issues. And it's going to basically get all the computer power it needs to run smoothly, hopefully. So I'd recommend just changing that. Other than that, you don't really need to change too much else here unless you do scroll down all the way to network. Now here you're going to be able to set, make sure you got this set properly. If you're getting an error about your streams not wanting to go live, failed to connect to the streaming server, something like that, you might have to click this setting and change it from default to where mine says Ethernet, because I'm plugged into Ethernet. You might have to change it to something like that. Otherwise, there's 3 settings here. I would recommend turning on dynamically change bitrate when dropping frames while streaming. This means you're not going to skip frames completely if your internet does have a hiccup here and there. This is especially useful if you do have a lower internet speed of like only 10 up, like I mentioned earlier, because any little dips in service can impact your stream, and this is going to help just lower the quality of your stream instead of actually skipping full frames, which will lower the quality for those time periods, but it will still look better than if it was just skipping all over the place frame-wise. You can also enable new networking code. In my experience, this just usually ends up in a better quality stream and reduces any issues I have. Low latency mode, don't really need in most cases unless you're just really going for some low latency live streaming. And then these other 2 settings, just leave those alone. When it comes to scene collections, you shouldn't really need that too much unless it's just something you need to do. Notifications, I don't really mess with those too much. Appearance, I don't mess with that. I don't mess with remote control. I've never used virtual webcam. I don't use the game overlay. I don't like game overlays. And then that's pretty much it for the settings. So now you have your settings fully configured, ready to start setting up your actual scene and sources. Now, before we set up a scene and sources, I'm going to just show you the mixer over here on the right. Earlier, we already set up our, my headphone audio and my microphone audio. So they're going to be right here. As you can see, when I'm talking, my microphone is getting picked up right here. So that's clearly my microphone and it's working. You can see it's working, which is good to always test. Then of course we got the game here. If you didn't set it previously earlier, you want to change it, you can click this cogwheel here, go to properties, and then you get this menu, which gives you basically the same settings as earlier. You can adjust the volume if you want to turn down your game volume right here, or if you want to turn down your microphone volume, you can do that here. And also change the device here and things like that. Also for me, you might notice in my microphone it's only recording in like the left ear or whatever, so I have to downmix to mono. So if you do have that problem like I do with my weird microphone setup, where your audio is only coming through one ear on your microphone, you can go to your microphone setting and set this down mix to mono. So that's just a little bonus tip right there. So now we're ready to set up our scene and sources. Now it's probably already gonna give you a default scene here, or you can just add a new one. You can make many of these and set them up how you want. Now, once you have your scene, you're just gonna come over here to your sources. This is basically just gonna be your game and your webcam. And then if you have any notifications or stream alerts and things like that, you can set them up here as well. And you can get more advanced with stuff here. There's a lot of things you can do, but we're gonna keep it very simple today. And I'm just gonna show you how to set up a webcam and a game or program. So video capture is gonna be what you wanna use for a camera or a capture card. So I'm gonna go ahead and add source. I'm just gonna leave it named default. So when you add this video capture source, it's going to look something like this. You're going to be able to go to device and select your webcam. In this case, I'm recording with my camera, so I'm not going to select it. It wouldn't work. It would probably freeze. But you would select your camera right here, and then you're going to get a few settings here. You can set your resolution, your frame rate, a couple basic settings here. Make sure your resolution is as high as it'll go for your camera to get the most quality. And then you're pretty much set up there, and you're going to be able to drag it around where you want up here, position it, and things like that. Once you have that, we're going to click to add another source. Now, if you're doing games, you want to do game capture, click add source again, and you can leave this on auto. It works pretty good whenever you launch a game. It's basically just going to automatically detect it. Otherwise, you could do capture specific window, and then you can go to window and select the specific game that you have open. You have to have the game open, and then it will show up here and it'll say, Call of Duty, and then you can select that or whatever game you have open. But you could also just leave it on auto if you want. Also, it comes a default with capture cursor on, which you probably want. But pretty much you don't need to edit any of these other things. Just leave this on either auto or capture specific window, and then you're good to, again, you can drag this around, but obviously you want to leave it probably full screen in most cases so that people can actually see your game full screen. But keep in mind, if this was your webcam, you can actually adjust it like this. Also, if you want to hold Alt, you can adjust it like this. So this might be useful for your webcam if you want to kind of resize it to like a square shape and then let go of Alt, and then you can kind of adjust that. But in this case, of course, we're going to right click this, go to transform, and we can go ahead and do fit to screen. It's going to make sure it's filling up our entire screen evenly. So that's one way to do that. But now something important to note to make sure you don't mess up on is if we look at our sources here, our game capture is above our video capture or our webcam. So that's actually important. That would mean that my game capture is covering up my webcam. So make sure you just click and drag your webcam up above your game capture or whatever you want it on top of. Otherwise, you're going to be hiding behind it and the stream won't be able to see it, which you'll be able to tell by this preview here. Now, if you want to record something that's not necessarily a game or application like that, you can go to add source again. And you're going to have a couple of options here. First, you could do display capture. I'm not going to recommend this because this is going to share your entire monitor at all times. Anything that's on that monitor, it's going to show. So it'd be easier to leak information or things you don't want to show on stream. So I wouldn't recommend that. What I would recommend is window capture. This lets you share a specific window. So if we go and add the window capture source, it works pretty similar to the game capture set to specific window where you just select the window you want to capture. And then you're good to go. It'll pop in there. You can click done, and then you'll have that set up. So you can also use window capture for capturing a game window if your game capture isn't working right. That can be a workaround. But yeah, those are pretty much the main sources you're going to want to need. I'm sure I've missed many other little things and details, but this should pretty much be the complete guide to getting you started step by step. I tried to cover everything as well as I could. And from this point, you're pretty much ready to click go live to wherever you set up to go live at, or you can even click record and start recording videos. Now, keep in mind that when we added these sources, another thing I'll mention since I just noticed it is like the video capture device, some webcams might have an internal microphone. Make sure you come down here and make sure it's muted, or you could even mute it and then you could actually remove it or even just hide it. I'm just going to remove it, and that'll just make sure there's no confusion in my mixer on which microphone I'm using and things like that, because you don't want to have two microphones on. And issues like that. But anyways, something I just noticed there to mention at the end. But that's it. Hopefully this was a clear step-by-step guide for anybody looking to start live streaming with Streamlabs desktop or even OBS, because again, most of these settings are going to apply to that as well. If you haven't already tried out Streamlabs desktop and you do want to download it, I'll leave a link in the description below to try it out, and you can go through all the setup steps we did today. That's going to be it for this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.